I am Lynn Nguyen, 34, living in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, in a small red brick house surrounded by a white picket fence. Every fall, my front yard is covered with golden maple leaves falling in a cascade, creating a picturesque carpet. I often sweep the yard with my two 4-year-old twins, Ethan and Emma, while their laughter echoes in the chilly air. I work as an administrative assistant for Buckeye Insurance, a local insurance company that is not very prominent, but the job is stable enough for my husband, Ryan, and I to make ends meet. Ryan is a civil engineer, a tall American man with messy brown hair and a gentle smile that has captivated me since I first met him at Ohio State University more than a dozen years ago. He is currently in Dallas, Texas, supervising a large bridge project and will not be back for another 2 weeks. Ethan resembles his father, his clear blue eyes sparkling with an irrepressible mischief. The boy loved to doodle on the walls with crayons, his crooked lines both angering and amusing me. Emma was gentler, with her jet-black curly hair inherited from me, always hugging an old teddy bear I had made from leftover fabric when it was still a newborn. Every time I looked at them, my heart melted. I loved them more than I loved myself. Long days of working and then coming home to take care of the children alone left me exhausted. Sometimes I just wanted to collapse on the sofa and cry, but I still tried, telling myself that I had to be the best mother for Ethan and Emma. My parents, Mr. Tam and Mrs. Hoa, lived a 15-minute drive from my house in a quiet neighborhood near downtown Columbus. My father was a man of few words, with dark skin from years of working under the hot sun in Vietnam before coming to America in 1982 with my mother. They brought with them a dream of changing their lives, opening a small faux restaurant, working hard to raise me. My mother, on the other hand, is lively, loves to laugh, and recently has become addicted to posting pictures on Facebook, from the pot of daisies in front of the house to selfies of her trips to the nearby Vietnamese market. I grew up listening to their stories about family, about the spirit of Vietnamese people never abandon each other. In my heart, my parents have always been the most solid support, like a beacon of light whenever I lost my way. But everything changed one Tuesday afternoon. I was making coffee in my office, the aroma mixed with the hum of the photocopier, when the phone rang. The doctor called, his voice deep and serious. "Lynn, we've seen the results of the CT scan. You have a tumor in your uterus, benign, but you need surgery this week to avoid complications." I stood there, frozen, my coffee cup slowly cooling, my mind spinning as if falling into a void. Surgery didn't scare me. I had already had a C-section when I gave birth to Ethan and Emma, so the knife was not unfamiliar. But the biggest question that stuck in my mind was, what about Ethan and Emma? Ryan couldn't make it back, and in my panic, all I could think about was my parents. That night, I drove my old Honda Civic over to their house, carrying Ethan and Emma in their superhero and princess pajamas. It was a chilly October day, the wind blowing the last leaves down the dark street. I rang the doorbell, and my mother shouted from the kitchen, "Who's there?" "Wait, I'm frying fish." My father opened the door, still wearing the faded grey sweater he wore every night, his face wrinkled but with the familiar toughness. Ethan and Emma rushed in, hugging them. Their laughter warmed the small house. I stood there watching, thinking to myself, everything will be okay. After the kids played with some old toys in the corner of the room, a truck I used to play with as a child, and some dolls with missing arms, I sat down at the dining table with my parents. The fragrant smell of fried fish wafted through the house. My mother placed a plate of hot fish on the table, smiling gently. "Eat, Lynn. You're too skinny." I took a deep breath, trying to organize the chaotic thoughts in my head, then opened my mouth. "Mom, Dad, I have something to ask. I have to have surgery this week, a tumor in my stomach. The doctor said it's benign, but it has to be operated on immediately. I'll be in the hospital for a few days, and Ryan can't come home yet. I'd like you to look after Ethan and Emma for a few days, okay?" The atmosphere in the room suddenly became heavy. My mother stopped laughing. Her eyes darted to look at my father. He put his chopsticks down on the table, didn't say anything, just let out a soft sigh. There was a long silence that seemed like a century. Then my mother spoke, her voice lowered. "Lynn, you're always like that. You always rely on us for everything. You're all grown up, married, and have children. Why do you act like your parents have so much free time and have to take care of you?" I was stunned, and before I could react, my father continued, his voice even but cold. "This weekend, your parents bought tickets to the Kenny Rogers concert in Cincinnati. They booked it last month, $75 a ticket, and you can't cancel. Take care of it yourself. Don't be a burden to your parents anymore." The word burden was like a knife piercing straight into my heart. I tried to keep my voice calm, even though my throat was tight. "I don't want to bother you, but this is an emergency. You don't have anyone else to rely on." My mother waved her hand, her voice becoming harsher. "Then hire a babysitter." "Your parents are old. How can they run after 2 kids all day? Besides, your parents also want to rest and go out to relax. Don't be so selfish." She turned away, as if ending the conversation. I sat there, my hands gripping the edge of the table, tears welling up in my eyes, but I bit my lip to keep from crying. Memories flooded my mind. My parents staying up all night when I was sick, my mother driving me to school in the rain, the family is everything, words they used to teach me, and now they chose a concert instead of helping me in my most desperate moment. I stood up, my voice trembling. "Okay, I get it. Ethan, Emma, let's go home." The kids were confused, but still ran to hold my hand. On the way home, I turned on the radio. Sweet Caroline played, but I felt nothing but a chill in my heart. That night, I lay on the sofa, watching my 2 children sleeping soundly in the room. Ethan hugged his pillow, Emma still clutched her teddy bear. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, wondering if I was being too sensitive. I had always believed that family was something I could rely on at any time, but now that belief seemed shattered. I thought about calling Ryan, but he was in an important meeting in Dallas. I didn't want to worry him anymore. The feeling of loneliness suffocated me, as if the whole world had turned its back on me. The next morning, I arrived at the office with dark circles under my eyes from lack of sleep. I searched my contacts, called a few acquaintances, but everyone was busy. One on a business trip, one who had just given birth, another working overtime. My head was pounding, and I wanted to collapse on the table and cry. At that moment, Sarah Miller, a colleague sitting next to me, walked in with 2 cups of Starbucks. Sarah was the typical American mother, blonde hair tied in a ponytail, wearing an Ohio State hoodie, always full of energy despite raising 3 children alone after a divorce. "Hey, Lynn, you look like a ghost. What's up?" she asked, pushing the coffee toward me. I hesitated, not wanting to bother anyone after last night, but Sarah's warm gaze made me cry. I told her everything, the tumor, the surgery, my parents refusing to go to a Kenny Rogers concert. Sarah burst out laughing. "Oh my God, Kenny Rogers! The Gambler is great, but leaving your daughter to listen to music is too much." Then she got serious and put her hand on mine. "Listen, Lynn, I'll look after Ethan and Emma, don't worry." I widened my eyes. "Really? But you already have 3 kids." Sarah interrupted, patting my shoulder so hard that I almost spilled my coffee. "What difference does 5 or 2 make? My house is already like a zoo. 2 more monkeys would be more fun. Besides, I know you would do that for me if I needed it." "Right?" I choked up, nodding. "Thanks, Sarah. I don't know what else to say." On the day of the surgery, Sarah arrived early, driving a scratched silver SUV. She brought a bag of old toys and a box of Krispy Kreme donuts, my favourite. "Give the kids some sugar so they won't miss their mommy," she winked, hugging me tightly. "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. Get some rest." Watching her lead Ethan and Emma away, their hands holding hers, I felt a small glimmer of hope creep into my heart. The surgery lasted 4 hours and was successful. Lying on the hospital bed, my body aching, I kept looking at my phone, waiting for my parents to call, but nothing. A friend texted, "Lynn, your parents posted a picture of the concert on Facebook. They looked so happy." I opened it, saw my mum smiling with a glass of wine, my dad wearing a new cowboy hat, captioned, "Great night with Kenny Rogers." I hung up, tears streaming down my face. They didn't ask me once. But Sarah was different. She sent dozens of pictures and videos. Ethan, Emma playing with her kids in the leafy yard, eating KFC, Emma spilling sauce, Sarah laughing out loud. One night she called on FaceTime. Ethan held up a doodle. "Mom, I drew this for you." Emma chimed in, "I miss you, come home soon." I laughed for the first time in days, feeling relieved. When I was discharged from the hospital, Sarah picked me up and told me about the kids' mischief. Ethan climbed a tree, almost gave me a heart attack. Emma wanted to sing Twinkle Twinkle every night. When they got home, they ran to hug me. The smell of milk in their hair touched me. I made tea and said, "Sarah, I owe you so much." She laughed, "What do you owe? You're my family now." 2 weeks later, I was recovering, though still tired. Life returned to normal, taking the kids to kindergarten, working, chatting with Ryan on FaceTime. Sarah stopped by regularly, bringing brownies and laughter. My parents hadn't been in touch since the night I left their house in tears. The distance grew, but I tried not to think about it, reminding myself that Sarah and the people who really cared were there. Then, one Friday afternoon, while I was frying instant noodles for the kids, my mother called, her voice trembling. "Lynn, come back now. Your dad fell off his bike and is in the hospital." I turned off the stove and asked, "What's wrong?" My mother choked. "Dad went to get some wine. It rained. His bike slipped. He broke his femur and his head hit the ground." I called Sarah and she came right away. "Go, I'll babysit." At the hospital, Mum sat crying in the hallway. Dad lay unconscious, his head bandaged, his leg in a cast. Mum said, "Dad wanted to apologize to you, come visit the kids, but he fell." She covered her face. "If he hadn't rejected you that day, this wouldn't have happened." I held her hand. "It's over. Dad needs us now." That night, Dad woke up and whispered, "I'm sorry." I squeezed his hand. "Dad, rest, I'm here." The leg surgery was successful, but he had to use crutches for half a year. His head might affect his memory. Seeing my parents' regret, I wasn't angry anymore, but my heart still ached. Sarah brought the kids over, smiling. "Family, right?" The autumn wind blew. I understood that family was not just blood, but people like Sarah, always by my side when I needed them most.